Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Tori and today I wanted to share some of the tips and tricks that I have when it comes to stamping in my bullet journals or just in my general crafty experience. I have received maybe like a couple requests via Etsy actually for some tips and tricks for stamping. So I figured I would go ahead and make a video and get this uploaded in case there's anybody else out there who might find my speaking helpful. I don't know. So I have a whole page right here of different things that I wrote down. So I'm going to be referencing this. And I wanted to start by chatting briefly about the different kinds of stamps that are out there. And I have examples of some of them just immediately. Of the various kinds of stamps that are out there, I think the most common stamps are going to be your rubber stamps. So stamps that are on a block, usually some kind of piece of wood, and they are a rubber material. These are generally going to be the kinds of alphabet stamps and stuff like that that you would see a lot of creators on YouTube using. Specifically like these ones, these are rubber stamps, and I have another set from Amazon that I use frequently on my channel as well. I use these ones quite a bit too. So we've got rubber stamps. Photopolymer stamps, which are these ones right here. These are the stamps that I create and have manufactured for me. I use photopolymer stamps. They are my favorite. And then silicone or just regular clear stamps. You can see like right away that like this one just immediately came off of the thing. Silicone stamps have a different feel to them than photopolymer stamps, and honestly that's why I don't use them, because I don't like the way that the silicone feels. But I've got some examples of those here as well. I will buy them if I really love the designs on the stamp and just kind of put up with the way that they feel. These ones are from Archer and Olive, and this one is from Alif Sahin Designs. And then I think I got this one from Michael's, and I just loved the way that it looked. So I've got a couple of silicone stamps here as well. Primarily, I use photopolymer stamps probably like 99% of the time. And then my next most used stamp is going to be rubber stamps. I almost never reach for silicone stamps unless I have a very specific reason to need to grab a certain stamp set. So there's these three kinds of stamps. I also wanted to chat a little bit about ink as well. So let's kind of just set these right here for a second. I'm primarily going to stick to talking about black inks in this particular video. I have a couple of different variations of colored inks that I will also use, but for the most part, I tend to prefer to use black inks and then just color them in. That way I can choose the colors that are matching my theme and don't have to worry about looking specifically for an ink pad that would match. I will say my most favorite black ink pad is this one, the Archival Black from Close to My Heart. But since Close to My Heart is no longer in business, you can no longer buy this. And I want to cry tears every day because I didn't manage to get my hands on a re-inker for this. So once this is gone, like I'm just going to be so devastated. But yeah, so I have been searching for a replacement ink brand for that Close to My Heart Archival Black ink. And when I tell y'all, I have purchased so many inks, literally so many inks. Like it's a ridiculous amount of black ink that I have. I think this is it. Okay. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, 8. I have 8 black inks. There are different kinds of black inks, and I think that that is also going to be worth mentioning. So there are black inks that are alcohol marker friendly. I have a couple of those as well. So let's see. I think these three are my alcohol marker friendly black inks. So Simon Says Stamp Intense Black, Pink Fresh Studio Detail Black, and then the Jet Black from Lawn Fawn, which I haven't actually tried this one yet. So maybe we'll try it in this video. So these three are my alcohol marker friendly black inks. Also this one, Memento Tuxedo Black, is also alcohol marker friendly. And I think that this one is most comparable to the Color Theory dye ink that I have, honestly. With regards to like bleeding through papers and stuff. Then you have your archival inks. So these three, I believe, are all archival or permanent inks. So I have Ranger Archival Black, Stays On, and then a teeny tiny VersaFine. And then just my regular dye ink. This one is the best for not bleeding through your paper if you're using thinner papers and stuff like that. I use this one a lot as well, especially in my Hobonichi. This is going to be my go-to ink because all of these other black inks are 100% not going to work in that. They will immediately bleed through the paper. So there's a lot of inks here, a lot of options. So for using stamps to color in, you're going to want to use an archival ink or a permanent ink of some sort. That way, when you actually color over this, especially with a water-based marker like most of us will be using in our journals, the black ink will not smear. If you color over alcohol marker friendly inks with a water-based marker, in my experience, most of those will smear. Lots of different inks, that's for sure. Of the ones that I have here, I really like the Memento ink, but I don't feel like it's black enough. I also really like the archival ink, but since this ink is waterproof, I tend to smear it all over my pages and projects quite a lot. So it happens, and I kind of have to get over it. I haven't tried this one yet. This was actually in a little kit that I bought my kids, so we might stamp this out today and try it. This ink I actually don't really like much at all. Specifically for alcohol markers, I've had the worst time with my alcohol markers still bleeding when I use this ink. So, and that's the reason that I bought it for alcohol markers. Other than that, like, it's fine. I haven't tried to run a water-based marker over it to see if that causes any issues with it as well. I'm not 100% sure for that one. So let's move on to some of these other tips that I have. Okay. This tip is specifically for using your clear stamps, whether they're photopolymer or just regular clear stamps, whatever. I wanted to specifically mention this because I don't feel like I hear a lot of people talking about this, and you're probably going to have the hardest time seeing these. So I've got these little stamping blocks. I've got a lot of sizes. These are my most commonly used size. I have a circle one. I think this is a 3-inch circle, maybe 3.5-inch circle. I also have a like 2x2 square. Again, you probably can't see it because it's clear acrylic. And then a teeny tiny like 1-inch square one. And these are my most commonly used sizes. So with these types of stamps, the clear stamps, whether it be photopolymer or silicone stamps, when you're stamping things out, you want to select a stamping block that is closest in size to your stamp. And I'll give you a little bit of an example here with what I mean. Let's see. Let's use this one. So I have this little envelope here, and if I put this on this gigantic stamp, let's put it in the middle. I am more likely to have uneven pressure whenever I stamp this down, because when you're placing the pressure of the stamp down, your fingers are going to be on the outside. So you're going to just ultimately have more pressure on the outside, which can generally result in a very uneven stamp. So I want to try this ink pad. So let's open this one. So this is the Lawn Fawn Jet Black, which I have not used yet. So it's technically my kids. So when you're stamping like this, so this is obviously far too big. This acrylic block is far too big for this stamp. I don't know if I like that. So you can see, like, on this bottom one, like, the edges of my stamp are kind of fuzzy. The lines aren't really as even as they could be because the acrylic block that I'm using is a little bit bigger. So if we switch to an acrylic block that's closer to the size of the stamp, it just gives you more control over the pressure. And while I am talking about this, I also wanted to mention that if you have a more solid stamp, if you press the stamp down and just hold it for just a couple seconds, it usually will help all of those lines just remain a little bit more intact. So if we close up, this was the one that I did in the too big stamp, or too big ink block. Too big acrylic block, and this is the one with the acrylic block that's a little bit more closer to the size of the stamp. It's maybe not so noticeable with this particular ink and stamp, but this impression is a lot better than this one. So there's no fuzziness around the edges because I was able to get more even pressure, whereas the ones on the outside edges of this one are a little bit fuzzy because I had more pressure on the outside than I did on the inside. I hope that makes sense. Another thing, kind of along the same lines as the ink cube, I wanted to share some of my other favorite kind of items. So I have a Misty stamping platform tool. So if I have something that I know I'm going to want a perfect impression of, I will generally put my stamp on here. I have a sticky pad in here and stamp it multiple times. That way I can get a perfect impression. I usually do this if I'm stamping out things to use alcohol markers with, because I want the solid line to be like fully solid. You can also use like little foam pieces like this. Close to my heart used to actually include them with their orders. I think the cookie's got a lot of detail. So let's grab this cookie. And we'll use a little bit of the VersaFine as well and see if we can see a difference between this ink and the VersaFine ink. What was I saying? So if you have a very detailed stamp or the underneath of your paper, like if there was like a whole bunch of bulkiness under here, you can use a piece of foam to really help get like a super good impression of your stamp. So that's it with the foam underneath. Let me do one without the foam. And we can compare the two. So this is, again, the VersaFine Onyx Black. So I did have a little bit of issues with my sprinkles up here. Some of those didn't stamp fully. And you can see that I had to press a little bit harder on this one. So some of these lines are a little bit thicker than they are over here. I will say that of the two, I think this one is the better stamping impression, which is the one that I did with this piece of foam. And to be quite honest with you, this piece of foam, like, is it foam? I'm not even sure what this is called, but this is from an order that I received. I just kept it and cut it down, and I was like, oh, I can use that for stamping. So you will likely receive one of these in an order one day, and you could just save it if you wanted to keep it for your stamps. I will also note that this ink is a lot blacker than the Lawn Fawn ink. So like that's just one of the things that I've noticed while testing out different black inks is that some of them are a lot blacker. Some of them are more like of a gray kind of, like the Memento ink I think looks a little bit more on like a deep, deep gray side, but that's neither here nor there. You can also use these kind of, what are these things called again? Paper boards, I think. I think that's a paper board. If you've got a bulky background, you can also use a paper board to just kind of give yourself a little bit more solid of a surface. One thing specifically when it comes to stamping in journals that I personally do is if I'm at the beginning of my journal, there's obviously like a disconnect here for where the actual book is going to be hitting. So like if we were flat on the table, like it would be like this. And that doesn't lend to a very like good stamping area because this space, it's going to be hard to get the correct amount of pressure there. So I will usually take something, either another book or an ink pad, and I'll place it underneath the book directly where I'm going to be stamping. And it will definitely like help you get a better impression for anything that you're stamping on this side of the book. When you get closer to like the middle / the end of the book, it's not so much of an issue, but at the very beginning, it is very, very helpful to find something that's going to be of the same like thickness to level this up some, so that you're stamping on a flat surface. And if you've watched my journal setup videos, especially my New Year journal setup videos, I always have like an ink pad, usually one of these because they're a lot bigger. Just always have like an ink pad underneath the front of my notebook because it helps me get a better impression while I'm stamping. If you have a super detailed stamp, let's see. Let's use one of these silicone stamps because I think I experienced this the most with silicone stamps. So if you've got like a very detailed stamp, and this one right here is a very detailed stamp. I think I've used this before. I don't know. So we'll use this and we'll use, I think I have an ink that I got from like an Amazon package or something. So I have one of these like black inks. This is a foam ink pad, which I despise. I hate these kinds of ink pads. But just from, this is awful. I hate this. Just from like watching like people on YouTube stamping in their journals, I see a lot of people using like silicone stamps and like ink pads like this. So let me show you. Okay, I think that's inked up. So when you are stamping a very detailed image like this one, the harder you press, the more smushed your stamp will be. So I'm going to press this really, really hard. So if you look closely at that, you can see some of the top portions of it are really, really thick. And down here at the bottom, they're really, really thick. And this little area right here around the stems just looks smushed. So the harder that you press on the detailed images, the more likely you are to smush the stamp itself. So I will stamp this again and just not press as hard as I did on this first one. And I have no idea where I got this ink from, honestly. So you can see that that looks a lot lighter because I didn't press as hard. So I probably could have pressed a little bit harder on that one, but you can also see all of the details in there as well. So the pressure that you're applying to the actual stamp does make a difference. And if you have a new stamp set, especially one with lots of details, my recommendation would be to pull out like a scrap piece of paper and stamp the stamp out a few times. That would also prep your stamp for use, and it would kind of give you an idea of really how much pressure you should be putting on that stamp when you stamp it down. To really give you the best results. Like, I don't think I've used, that's pretty big. I don't think I've used most of these, actually. Another thing that you can do is if you've got like a clear thing, this is the lid to that stamp. You can use lids for the clear stamps. For brand new stamps, you will want to kind of prep them or prepare them for stamping. If you've seen me in my videos, like rubbing stamps on my hands, that's what I'm doing because there is like residue and oils left over from the factory productions. So you're just kind of scraping those off. I've also seen some people use erasers to do this and, prep the stamp for stamping if you don't want to potentially get any chemical residue on your skin, which obviously makes a lot of sense. I am just a little bit too lazy for that, so I don't usually do it. So we will kind of ink this up again. I find it more difficult personally to ink up inks that have a foam pad. I don't remember what I was showing you. So that's the first stamp. And then let's pull one out that I haven't used. And kind of show you what it would potentially look like. Have I used all of these? I don't think. Okay. I haven't used any of the words in this one. So I will pull out just one of these words here. I'm not going to prep it, so I'm going to just stamp this down and get it. Oh, that one went perfect. Sweet. Okay, let's do the bunny. I think that'll give me what I'm looking for. So I'm not prepping this. I'm having a terrible time inking this up with this ink pad. And then stamping that down. So you'll see down here at the bottom, even though it was fully inked up, the part down at the bottom isn't as dark as the rest of that. And that's usually due to any like leftover residue and stuff like that from actual production. So we'll stamp this up again and then re-stamp it and see if we get a better impression. See? What a cutie. Cutie little bunny. Okay, so I'm gonna chat real quick about how I clean my stamps, just because I have a lot of inked up stamps here. So let me go get my cleaner and I will be right back. Okay, so for cleaning stamps, I've got this little thing. You may have seen it in some of my videos, possibly not. I think I usually pull it off to the side. I've got this little blue thing in here, and just like a little like canister, like ceramic dish that I think I found at the Target dollar spot like years and years and years ago. And I keep this in here. I have seen where some people on YouTube will keep their stamp like cleaners in a like little photo box. Let me get one. In like a little photo box like this. So, and I have mine cut so it would fit in here. But I personally do not like to do that because I think it makes them smell. And I don't like the smell, so I just keep mine in an open container, and then if it dries out while I'm using it, I'll just get it wet again. So this is a, like, what is this thing called? So this is the word, right? But it's pronounced chamois. So you want a lint-free chamois, essentially. And this is actually in the auto section. I think I got it at Walmart. And they come like in a gigantic roll, and I just cut them down into like little teeny tiny squares and just store them like this. And when they get a little bit too dirty and start to like separate and break because I've used it too much, I will just get a new one. So I cut mine down like this, and I will see if I can find the one that I purchased down below. You can also get like a stamp chamois or something like that if you were wanting like a more official brand, but this is like I think it's called like Absorb or something like that, and it's like a car cleaning brand, but it works perfectly for cleaning stamps. So I just take this and just wipe it on the stamp and get all of the extra ink off. This must be a permanent ink in here because it's not really coming off all the way, so that's good to know. But yeah, you just wipe it off. In the event that you have an ink that is permanent or not, like archival, something like that, you will generally end up staining your stamps just because of the nature of that ink. So let me find, just to give you an example, let me find maybe one that I haven't used or I haven't stained with and then I can show you with an ink that doesn't stain. Got all my blocks taken up here. Okay. So I'm just going to grab this snake stamp. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm going to grab this snake stamp, and I'm going to use my Color Theory Inky Black ink. This is not a archival ink or anything like that. What was I talking about? Oh, it won't stain. Okay, that's what I was gonna So we'll just stamp this really quickly here. All right, very cute. That stamped super well. I love that ink, especially for when I am doing something that I need to be able to not stain anything. And then this one is good as new. You'd never be able to tell that I stamped on it. As an example of being able to notice when you use like an archival ink or a ink that stains, both of these stamps, especially this December stamp, and this is actually why I pulled this one out specifically, I have used the crap out of this stamp set, and you can see that I actually used it with this ink, this archival black ink, because my kids wanted to color them with their like Crayola markers. So they are now very, very stained. This does not affect the stamp negatively. It just discolors it. And when I go to use this stamp again, it will not be like, there won't be any ink left on it because I did clean it off. I cleaned it with one of these situations. It's just stained now because I used an archival or permanent ink. There are cleaners out there specifically for permanent inks that you can use if you wanted to kind of try and prevent it from stamping. So we just kind of wiped this one down. It's still a little bit dark. So for this situation, and it stinks, this is the archival ink cleaner. You would just dab this on here. And it's got a little scrubby brush on it as well. So you would dab it on there and then just let it sit for a second. They also have little like scrubby trays that you can get for your stamps as well. I don't have one of those, so I can't show that, but I do have this. So this is another way to clean inks. It's got a dabber top, and then it's got cleaner inside. I don't know what kind of cleaner is inside. But yeah, so you press the dabber to release the liquid. You can kind of see the inky coloring bubbling up on there, and just let it sit for a few minutes. And then you just want to get all of the actual ink cleaner off. I'm just going to use this because I don't actually have a paper towel near me. But you can see that that is now a lot cleaner. It's still a little bit darker than it originally was, but it's not black anymore, and you can almost see through it again. So that is another option for cleaning stamps. Again, this is the quickest and easiest way for me. And then if you ever have stamps that are kind of falling off the backers, and I do have an example of this as well. So hold on, let me put my stuff. I was stamping out my title here, and I just left the stamps on top instead of putting them back because I'm me. So this is my typewriter alphabet stamp set, and I use this stamp all the time. And you can see here that some of these letters that I did not use, like this T is no longer sticking in here, and the S is not where it's supposed to be. I have not touched these letters or used them today. So for situations like this, what I would recommend that you do if you find yourself with a stamp that is no longer like adhering to the back here, you can take just like a wet wipe and then kind of wipe down where the stamp actually goes, because, you know, we're touching this, we're getting our fingers all on this, and it's not like as clean as it was when we first got it, blah, 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 all that. And then take these stamps right here, because I don't know if you can be able to see that, but like it is not, like there's stuff all over the back of this S, there's stuff all over the back of this T, because they're very frequently used letters, I guess, for me. So like, look at the difference in that. So you can do that. That would help. And then you can also take like an old toothbrush or some type of bristle brush and take that and the actual stamps to your sink. I would probably do it over maybe like a little bowl like this, so you don't wash any of them down the sink. And just get some gentle soap on top of your bristle brush and just kind of give a good brush over of soap and water to the stamp, and it will be like brand new essentially. Like the color won't be clear anymore, but it'll be like, it'll stick again essentially. So let's see, did that, oops, lost my A. And honestly, Like these are not moving anymore. So even that just quick little clean that I did where I cleaned the back of the stamp and then wiped down the actual acetate sheet that it's on, like was enough to get that sticking again. So if you need to, you can do that. Or if you want like an all over, like really good deep clean, the bristle brush and like gentle soap and warm water will work wonders. Oh, I don't, okay. Get back where you're supposed to be. Okay. So like, and it's back. These two were not, like they were just floating around in there and now they're sticking, which is fantastic. So the last thing I think that I had on my list here to kind of go over were just like for funsies, some funsies things. So let me just do a quick little tidy up of all of the stuff that I've got all over the place and grab the stamp set that I want to use for funsies. All right, so I've got a couple things that I just want to show you for fun because I really love doing these things. So I have my Collage Elements stamp set. And I'm going to use this one because it's meant to be more of like a background element stamp set. And I wanted to share some second and third generation stamping. And I'm going to use StazOn for this because I'm pretty sure that this, because it's fairly new, is like super, like it's so inky. So I think it'll be a good example. So when you stamp, when you do your first stamp, that is first generation stamping. If you stamp again, that is second generation stamping. And then another stamp after that would be third generation stamping. And as you can see, like there's less and less like ink on the stamp, obviously. But it makes for like a really cool kind of layering effect. And this is something that I love to do like in the background of my stuff. And you may have seen me do it in my videos before. Like I'll do something like this, or I will use like a date stamper, a rolling date stamper. Let's see, what's today? Today is February 15th, 2025. So I will, when I date things with my rolling date stamper, I will do one and then just stamp the same date all over the place. So it'll look something like that. So the multi-generation stamping is a super fun technique, especially if you're just looking to fill up some extra space in your journal. And this ink is permanent, so it does stain the stamp. Again, it's not something that I really worry about. And I personally actually like when my stamps get stained because it's a way that I can tell that I've actually used the stamps. So there's that. Another thing that I wanted to share, which is really fun that you can do with stamps, is ombre stamping. Whoop. So I've got two colors here. These are from Pink Fresh Studio. And I love Pink Fresh Studio's colored inks. That detail black, though, I'm not a fan of that one for the purpose that it's meant for. But I love all of the other colored inks. So I'm going to pull out another one of these Collage Elements stamps. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these two colors and I'm going to stamp half of my stamp on, which one of these is lighter? Okay, so I'm going to do my lightest color first. And I'm just going to stamp a little bit more than half of the stamp. And then I'm going to come over and then stamp the other half of the stamp, overlapping just a little bit with the darker color. And then if you've got like one of these little pouncer tools, you can kind of even pounce a little bit just to blend them together some. And then we will just stamp this. And you can see that there is a little bit, oh gosh, will it focus? Can you see that? I know I said I wasn't going to talk about inks in this video, or at least colored inks, but most of my colored inks are from Pink Fresh Studio, and I keep them in this little Pink Fresh Studio storage thing. And what I like most about their inks is that they sell them in 4-packs, and then they have like the same color scheme, but just lighter versions of each color. And I love that. Let's do maybe we'll skip one so we can really see it. So let's clean the pink ink off of this one. Okay, so again, you're going to want to start with your lighter color. Is this dry? Again, I usually go a little bit more than halfway because I want that halfway section to be where they're overlapping. I can see this one on here. Okay, and then I'm just going to kind of rub those a little bit together with my finger. And we'll stamp this one out and hopefully have a better visual example of the ombre effect. Yes, that's much better. Okay. Now let's just hope that the camera will catch it. So, there is an ombre effect that you can do with your stamps if you've got some colors or variations of colors. Another really fun thing that I like to do with stamps, and I don't have like an example right here immediately that I can share with you, but if you have stamp and die sets, one thing that I really like to do with my stamps that come with a die set, especially if it's a cute one, I like to stamp it out on sticker paper, and then I can color it with alcohol markers, right? So I'll stamp out my stamps on sticker paper and then die cut them out with the coordinating die. And then I can use my alcohol markers or just regular markers or what have you. And then you can use those as stickers in your journal. I like to make stickers like that with my stamp and die sets that I can put in my journal. And it's such a fun thing to do, especially if you're trying to add some additional like layering or texture to your spread. It's a really quick and easy way to do that. And then as this has set a little bit, you could see that it's kind of ombreed a little bit more and the colors are fully settled. Super cute. I love that. Now, that is everything that I had written down. But I did want to segue a little bit into just like I don't even know what I would call this, but this is something that I struggled with a lot when I first started stamping, especially when it came to stamping in my journaling. I was always really, really trying to make everything perfect all the time. And I really struggled with getting past that as I continued journaling. Because like I do tend to be a little bit of a perfectionist. So if I had letter stamps and they weren't in a perfect line, or the stamp didn't like go all the way down, like you can see right here, this M is not perfectly solid. It looks a little bit distressed. I would be, when I first started doing this, I would be genuinely like upset, like almost so much that I wouldn't even want to use my journal. So one thing that helped me get past that, because I know a lot of people are just like, oh, just don't care. And like, that's really hard, especially if you're somebody that does care a lot. One thing specifically that helped me get past that was getting a stamp set of like a typewriter stamp set, if you will, where a typewriter is never perfect. and you don't go to a typewriter to use it and expect it to be perfect, right? Nobody expects perfection if they're using a typewriter. So if I'm then going to be using a typewriter stamp in my journal, if it's not perfect, it's just going to end up looking more like an actual typewriter, right? I feel like that's a good example of what I'm trying to get at. So I found some stamps that I liked using that didn't need to be perfect, and then went in with the mentality that it wasn't going to be perfect. And once I embraced that mentality of things not being perfect and using that stamp set initially, it really helped me get past it's not perfectly straight, it's not perfectly stamped, everything's not perfectly solid, blah, 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 like all those things, because that was something, again, that I really, really struggled with at first. Another thing here, is the lining of the stamps. One way to get around this, because it's almost impossible to perfectly line your stamps up, really almost is impossible. One way to get around that as well is to intentionally make them misaligned. So you can see up here, I used 3 different stamp sets to do this, and I very intentionally misaligned everything. So if you go into your journaling with the mindset that I'm going to be misaligning things, I don't want this stamp to stamp perfectly, I want it to look distressed or something like that, it will generally, at least in my experience, help you get past that needing it to be perfect. I don't know if that's going to be a struggle point for anybody else, but when I first started stamping 3 years ago, it was a big thing for me, and I really, really struggled to enjoy my spreads if everything wasn't perfect, and it just kind of took me out of being able to journal. So I wanted to share some of the things that I did to kind of move past that, and now I'm stamping all over the place, all over the time, and just being a mess. I've got ink all over myself. I'm just, but I love it. Stamping is one of my most favorite things that I do. But that's all I have to share for today's video. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comments. If you want to see me talk about something else, or create a video on something else, leave it in the comments, and I'd be happy to kind of put something together to further help you on your stamping journey. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!